Hey everyone. All right, so let's go ahead and create our components file, components folder, and then we'll start getting our children components started. So we're going to go over here into the source and let's create a folder called components. And then inside there, let's create our first child component. Let's call this one heading.js. That's where we're going to create just the heading, the title of our app. So that's a real easy one. And let's go ahead and do another one called, this is one where we're going to have the inputs. So we're going to have a form with a couple of inputs. So let's call this one form.js. And then we're going to create one more, and this one is going to be where the forecast we get the actual forecast, so let's call it forecast.js. Okay. All right, so let's go into the heading one first, and let's create this one. So let's say import React from React. And we're going to structure it a little differently. This is a functional component, and we're going to structure it just a little differently than we did in the last couple of projects. We're going to put it in a variable called const heading equals, and we're going to have our props passed in there, and we're going to do the arrow function. And we're going to return, let's return a div. And inside the div, I don't know why it's not coming back, doing that for me. Oh well. Okay, so inside our div, we're going to put an h1. Let's see, h1. And how about we say, what's the weather like? Question mark. What's the weather like? And then after that, let's put an h3. And inside the h3, let's say a little description. Find out what the weather conditions are in your city. Okay. And then we'll go to the bottom and we'll export this component. And we called it heading in our variable with a capital H. Okay. Let's make sure there's no mistakes. And it looks good. Okay, I'm going to save. All right, so now I'm going to go over to my app.js, and instead of forecast, or h1 forecast, let's just put in heading. All right. Oh yeah, and then up here we got to import it. So import, and we're going to say import heading from the components folder. So let's see, import heading from components folder, and then heading. Okay. Okay, save, and let's just see. All right, looks good. All right, let's go ahead and do just the inputs in the form, form child component. So go over here and go ahead and type it out again. It's always, I think it's good to type it out. instead of copy and pasting. It just depends. Since we're learning, it's probably a good idea. Okay. Next, let's do the same thing. Let's say const form equals, pass in our props, and let's see, what do we want to do? We want to return we are going to create a little form. So let's do a form tag. And inside of there, let's do a couple of inputs. Input, let's see, type text. Okay. And we're going to give it a name of city, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be having our inputs be, they're going to input the name of the city and they're going to input the name of the country. Those are the ways we're going to grab our weather. Okay. And then let's do a placeholder equals, let's do choose a city. All right, sounds good. We got this. Okay, that's our first input. Let's see, let's do our second input. And, all right, type equals text. And name, this time we're going to do name equals country. And then our placeholder is going to be choose a country, right? Yeah, makes sense. And then we'll be done with that. Okay. All right. We are going to also add a button. So let's go ahead and add a button on right before the form is ended. Let's see. Button. And then let's say, we're going to say get weather. Okay. All right. And then we're going to export it. Okay. Let's make sure it looks good. I like it. All right. We got everything on there. Save it. And let's bring it into app.js. So we go back to app.js and we're going to import it here again, just like we did for heading. Oops. From, and it's the same path. Okay. And then over here, we'll add it to our return. Okay. All right, let's check it out. All right, so it looks pretty good. All right, now we have it. Now we can do the styling now, or we can do it later, and or we can start working on the functionality. So I suggest let's work on the functionality, and we'll do the styling in a little bit. Okay. So in our next video, we are going to work on the forecast.js, and we may also need to get our API key from OpenWeather. I think it's called OpenWeather Maps or something. And we have to get the API key. So maybe we'll do that in the next video. All right, we'll see you soon. Welcome back. Okay, we're going to be going into this openweathermap.org site. So when you get there, this is the home page, And what you can do is, let's just kind of look around. So let's go to API. We'll start there. And I'm going to switch to Fahrenheit over here. So what you do when you get your weather API, you can read all about it, but I'm going to be grabbing the docs, the documentation for current weather data. And you can do, there's several different ones, and then most of them are quite a few of them are free. So we're going to do this one. And so if we hit the documentation, we can learn all about it. So we can make the API call and grab it by city name, which is what we're going to do, city ID, and then they give you examples of the API calls. And then you can just kind of look through all the different ways that you can fetch the data, zip code, and then if you keep going, if you keep scrolling down, you'll get to this part where they talk about the parameters. Okay, so here's the parameters. So this is how we're going to grab the information that we want. So we are going to get the icon weather.icon. We're going to get the weather description. We're going to get main temperature. We're going to get main pressure and main humidity. I think that's all we're going to be getting. Oh, we're going to do system.country to get the country code, and then we're going to use the city name, just name. So that's how we're going to be doing it, and we're going to be putting that into our state. First of all, we're going to put that in our where we say this set state on our app.js file. So in order to get your API key, what you do is, let's go back to where it says subscribe. So see where it says subscribe, so you just click on that, and we're going to get the free one, and all you do is click on get API key and start, and let's see what it says. Sign up and get an API key on your account page. It's free. So go ahead and go ahead and sign up and get your API key. They'll send it to you in an email, or you can log back in and get it that way. And we're going to be putting that in a const variable on our app.js file. So go ahead and do that, and we'll pause the video, and then we'll come on back and put it in our application. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is go back to our app.js, and let's go ahead and change this functional component to a class component. So let's go ahead, and in here I'm going to put my render, and then I'll erase all the other stuff. So I'm putting in my render function or method, and then we're going to return Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and just copy that, stick it in here. Okay, and then I'm going to delete all this good stuff. Okay, and then I'm going to go up here and let's go up here and say, let's just get rid of all that and say class app extends react dot component. Okay. All right. That should do it for now. All right, you know what I want to do? I want to also add our API key. So let's give it a variable const. Let's title it API underscore key, and go ahead and plug it in. Oh, Whoops, I copied it from earlier, but then I did this, so gotta go back and grab it. Here it is. Okay, so get yours and put it on in there, put it around in quotes, and that's it. That. Okay, so we're good. It does say on the documentation that it takes 2 hours before your API key is functional, or that it'll work, but we'll see. Okay, do I need another bracket here? I don't think so. Yeah, I guess I do. Okay, this should work. All right. There we go. Load. Everything's loaded. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our, well, let's go ahead and initialize our state. Let's do that next. So what we're going to do is above the render, we're going to say state equals, put a little space there. So let's see. What we're going to do, we're going to grab a bunch of those parameters from the weather app. So we were going to do temperature, and we're going to put it an empty string, and then that, nope, just a comma. And okay, we're going to do city, and let's see what else. We're going to grab the country. Let's see what else we're going to do. We're going to do humidity, pressure, humidity, and then we're going to do pressure. And you don't have to do all of these, but I just thought it would be good to do several different ones. And we're going to get that icon. That's my favorite. I like the icon. Let's see what else. Description. This tells us like the conditions, the weather conditions. And what else? Are we getting anything else? Oh, the only thing we got to do next is put an error in, because we want to make sure that if our user doesn't, puts in some fake, doesn't put a real city in, or just doesn't put anything in the input, that it doesn't break the app. So we have to have the error in there to take care of that. Okay. So that's good for that. That's our initial state. We're going to need to create a function for how we are going to get the value from the inputs. So we have to create a function, and then we're going to fetch from the API. I think we should probably do that next. Okay, so let's do it. All right, so what we're going to do next is, again, above the render, we're going to create a function, and we're going to call it getWeather. Okay. Async, and then we're going to have an event, which is clicking the button, and we're going to do an arrow function. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to target those two inputs. So let's put them inside of a const variable. So remember we're having the city input and the country input. So const city equals event.target e.target.elements.city.value, and that's going to grab the value that's in that input. And then let's do another one called const country, since we'll have both of those inputs, and we'll do the same thing. And next we're going to do our e.prevent default. And what that does is it keeps, you know, when you press the submit button on, or the get weather button, it just prevents the default behavior of refreshing. All right. Next, we're going to create our actual fetch. So this is our API call. So we're going to call it, let's call it API call, and we're going to put it in a const, and then we're going to say await fetch. And then we're going to create the API call. So we're going to need to put in some backticks, and we need to put in here the address of the call. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to openweathermap.org, and I'm going into the guide, and there's the documentation. So they talk about how here's a sample of an API call, but we don't want to use that because it's got the word samples, and it's a sample. It's not a real one. So to make a real one, we have to have the real address that we're going to need. So we need our own API key at the end. We are going to need all of this stuff. All this we're going to need. We're going to change, we're not going to have London and UK in there. We're going to change it to our city and country variables that we created. But since we're going to use most of it, I'm just going to copy it. And then we'll alter it when we get into our code. Okay, so we're in here. So I'm just going to copy it in. Okay, so we're going to get rid of the London, UK. And we're going to instead, we're going to put in our variables city that we created and country. So comma, and then our country. Okay. And then what I want to do is I want to add, well, we have to put in our API key here. So we'll go ahead and do that. And what we're going to use is we created a variable, if you remember, and we called it API, I think it was underscore key. And so that's how we're going to grab it. Let's check and make sure that it was, yeah, API key underscore key. Okay, so we're grabbing that. And then the other thing I wanted to grab was the Fahrenheit. I wanted to do Fahrenheit. So if I can remember what that was. Fahrenheit. Let's see. I'm going to go back to the docs and find it. All right, so they talk about it somewhere in here. Fahrenheit. Units, something about units. Units. That's not it. We're getting close. There it is. Okay, I want imperial units equals imperial. Okay, so I'm going to grab that. And then I go back to the code, and I'm going to put it right here. So, and units equals imperial. That should do the trick. Okay, so we got that going. What else? What else do we need? Okay, we're gonna, well, we have to finish this function. We're gonna have to do the await part where we make the JSON call, and then we have to do an if-else statement to grab all of our parameters. Okay, so we'll do that in the next video. See you in a bit.